Hi.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm really good.
Good.
Welcome back to another episode of Wicked
Mysterious.
I'm your host, Danny.
And I'm Katie.
And this is Season 2, Episode 7.
And we're back. We had a great break. It really was so nice.
Yes, it was really nice to spend time doing nothing over the holidays.
Yes. Let the brain recharge a little. Give us some, ambition and new ideas.
Yeah.
Feeling good.
Did you have a nice Christmas?
Christmas was sickies in the house.
Oh,
and
that's right.
Stayed home. But it was all right. We had good food. How was yours?
My Christmas?
Yeah.
It was good. My mom and I watched Lifetime movies.
That's really sweet.
We watched Fred Savage kill Candace Cameron. So that was...
Savage.
I was going to say that was a good time.
Damn.
That sounds really bad, but it was a good time watching old Lifetime movies.
Yeah. I really loved old Lifetime movies.
They're all on YouTube.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Anyway.
Yeah. So do we have any podcast related stuff to talk about?
Not that I know of.
Okay.
No real housekeeping.
Yeah, we're just back. We're just ready.
Yeah, we did get some nice messages, like people anticipating our
return.
Marvelous return. Mm-hmm. So that was nice.
That was really
That's always
nice.
Motivating.
Yeah.
But other than that, no.
Yeah, we're thankful. We're thankful for everybody who's listening.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for coming back.
Thanks for telling a friend. Thanks for subscribing to us on all the things also.
Yes.
That would be, that is how you can help us.
So, today, I've got a full, and what did we say this was, episode 7?
Mm-hmm.
It just keeps getting higher and higher as you're taking a sip.
Yes, it does.
So, all right. Dorothy Eady had a story, a solid story, that began at just 3 years old, and that she's stuck to her entire life. Her story had become one of the most compelling of its kind. Dorothy claims that when she was just a toddler, she was pronounced dead, only to come alive again, but this time equipped with a bunch of knowledge of ancient Egypt, and even a new, strong foreign accent. Dorothy's knowledge cannot be explained by even famous Egyptologists. Is this a case of true reincarnation, or a story that she created after brain damage? Let's get into it.
Ooh. I'm excited.
I know you like this one.
I don't know much about this.
Oh.
The only reason I know about it is because it was a listener's suggestion from one of my friends, Marissa.
Oh.
So shout out to Marissa.
I was just going to shout out to Shane because he's the one that suggested it to me. So
cool.
Shane and Marissa, this episode's for you.
Yay.
Yay. All right. So you really don't know much about this?
You and I have talked about it. So I know basic facts about what it is, but
okay.
No details.
Do you think I need a drink?
Do you need a drink?
Because my voice feels very
it's
raspy.
Dry. It's very dry in here.
Little 3-year-old Dorothy Eady was born in 1904 in London and was playing joyfully as any toddler when she slipped down her family home stairs, knocking herself unconscious. She was not breathing when her parents found her, and a doctor came to the home and pronounced little Dorothy dead. The doctor left the home and let the parents grieve, and said he would return within the hour with a death certificate, and they would be able to make arrangements for her death services at the time. The parents were heartbroken, of course, at the death of their only child, and as promised, the doctor returned back. They sat and began discussing the next plans when they heard some noises. The three ran to go upstairs and were shocked to not see Dorothy laying on the stairs, deceased, but instead she was in her bedroom again, playing with her toys happy like the incident had never occurred. The doctor was in disbelief and gave her another exam. There were 0 signs of trauma, and the doctor gladly let the family carry on as they would. Weird, right?
Yes.
You okay?
I have questions already.
All right, go.
I'll hold them.
Why? This is a full. We have time. You're scaring me.
I'm just wondering, like...
Because you're, like, looking off to the side and it's making...
first of all,
yeah,
it's crazy that she was dead that long.
Well, it was within an hour.
Yeah, but...
But we don't know how long. So it could have been 20 minutes, 30 minutes. But he said he would be back within the hour. And then all I know is he returned.
But she was already pronounced dead.
Already pronounced dead. Correct, yeah.
What year was this again?
By the doctor. 1904.
Okay.
So, yeah. This is when the visiting doctor came to the house and pronounced you dead.
Yep.
Yeah. So, Dorothy's parents quickly learned that there was something very different about their daughter. She was speaking at times in a strong foreign accent. She otherwise seemed healthy and needed no recovery at all from the fall, besides having some night terrors that were unusual. She had a repetitive dream that she was living in a huge columned building that was surrounded by beautiful gardens and trees. And every time she would wake from this dream, she would tell her mother that she wanted to go home. She would insist that she wanted to go home very often, and when her parents would nicely explain to her that she is home, she would get very upset. They would find her hiding under things at times, like the kitchen table, sulking about it, instead of running off and making adventurous mischief that toddlers would often do. She was very fixated and bothered, but a very smart little girl. She would often respond that she did not know where home was, but that she just wanted to be there when she was asked about her other home. Questions?
Nope, not yet.
She was 4 years old when she was dragged to a British museum with her parents. And like any other toddler in a museum that isn't made for children, she was extremely bored and uninterested. She dragged her feet and often sat down and complained most of the time. Sounds like my middle child, who's 8, gonna be 9. Until they approached an Egyptian exhibit. Suddenly, Dorothy perked up and became mesmerized at everything that her little eyes were seeing. She ran around excitedly when she saw the Egyptian statues. She removed her shoes and began kissing their feet, and then began to yell at everyone around to remove their shoes in front of them. Wild, right?
Yeah.
Wild. How old is she here? She's 4. She's 4. Her parents were embarrassed, and they tried to contain her, but she spotted a mummy. And at this time, she was completely silent and enchanted by it. Her mom came over and tried to pick her up and talk to her, but Dorothy resisted and insisted in a much older and strange voice that both her parents had never heard before that these were her people. These are my people. I really wish I talked like that really when I told stories. I should. The family continued on in the Egyptian exhibit and continued to revisit it in their spare time for Dorothy. When Dorothy was 7, she very much enjoyed studying an Egyptian encyclopedia that her dad bought her. She was a total bookworm, but most of her time she was into trying to study hieroglyphics and figure them out. She would insist she was trying to remember. She loved reading and was very intelligent. She was reading a science magazine one day when she came across a picture of the Temple of Sety, which was in the town of Abydos. But when she sees it, she immediately recognizes it as the place in her dream. She's so confused why there's no trees or gardens, though. So she asks her mother, and her mother studies it and says, "Why? What is this place?" And she smiles and says, "Mama, this is my home." So this was in a science magazine. It was an image of a temple in Egypt. As she grew older, and apparently it's the temple in her dream that she had been having the recurrent dreams of.
Yep.
Which is cool. As she grew older, her memories became clearer, and in the 1920s, she was very outspoken about her story in her teenage years. She would tell just about anyone who would listen, and she even got kicked out of Sunday school for arguing that Christianity was based on old religion of Egypt. Don't come for me, Christians. That's debatable. As time went on, she would continue to visit the museum, and an Egyptologist named Sir E.A. Wallace Budge got to know her and started to teach her to read hieroglyphics, and she caught on wicked fast. I mean, I think hieroglyphics would be pretty easy to learn. It's just pictures. So it's like, if you look at them, it's like a little picture of a man and like a tall thing and, like a bucket. And that's a word. So it's like, I don't know. I feel like it'd be easy.
Yeah.
Then again, English is a really difficult language. So who knows? Who knows what's easier? But she caught on really fast. When she was 15, she was still having dreams, but would often wake up hearing a voice from a man named Hora. She would go into a trance-like state with a pen and paper and write down the things that she would hear from him. She described her state as being not asleep but not awake, and she would always awake again to the notes in surprise, not recalling any of them and not recognizing the handwriting even, which is pretty cool.
So this seems like it's way more than, what is it?
Reincarnation.
Reincarnation. Why couldn't I remember that? Seems like it's way more than just reincarnation.
Yeah, I mean, she's waking up and hearing voices, and they're telling her stories.
And she doesn't remember.
And she doesn't remember
writing it.
So the story that he's telling her, she doesn't remember well, being told it. Eventually, she had a book of pages she wrote, and she figured out that it was actually the story of her life in Egypt 3,000 years ago. Her name in her previous life was Bentrisit, and I'm going to call her Benny because I have a very hard time pronouncing that name. It's spelt really hard, and I'll probably have a lot of editing for Danny if I don't.
It's okay.
Just call her Benny. So I'm going to call her that. And she was born in the town of Abydos, which is the town that she saw the temple in the picture. So during Seti the First's reign, her father served as a soldier and her mother was a vegetable seller who died when she was only 2 years old. This is her backstory in Egypt. Her father, being away so much, decided to hand her over to the temple of Omm Sety, where she would be raised well and to be a priestess. So dad, being in the service, wasn't able to care for her, so he's like, take her, When Benny became 12 years old, she was given 2 options for her future. She could choose to leave the temple and go off on her own, or become a consecrated virgin and stay. And she chose to stay. But eventually, Benny and Pharaoh Seti I had a love affair. And to make everything more complicated, she ended up becoming pregnant with his child. Oh, Benny, Benny, Benny. Little hoe.
Short hoe.
Oh. And at this time now, she had no choice but to confess her sins to the high priest. The high priest told her that this was unforgivable and that it would go to court and that she would most likely receive death for these sins. So, Benny, being the sweet little self that she is, wanted to protect the pharaoh and keep their story from trial, so she ended up taking her own life. Should have put a 1 in there, right? Sorry about that. Having the written story really helped Dorothy piece parts of her together that she didn't know was missing. She went on with some closure, working multiple jobs at a theater that her parents owned, but she wasn't working with her passion. Until 1931, she learned of a position in London, writing for an Egyptian public relations magazine. She enjoyed writing for the magazine a lot and really enjoyed advocating for Egyptian nationalism and independence, since things with the UK back then were still rocky. Her writing impressed a wealthy Egyptian man named Iman Abdul Mekwid, and they began corresponding and getting to know each other. In time, they fell in love, and Iman proposed to Dorothy, and she accepted, and just like that, she was on her way to Egypt.
Imagine if he was like an ancestor.
Yeah, for real. I actually had a similar thought. I did when I was doing the research. She arrived in Cairo and got off the boat, falling to her knees, and she began sobbing. She was overwhelmed with happiness and kissing the ground, and she felt like she was really finally home. Dorothy,
what about the fact that like so much time has passed and things look different? Did she say anything about that?
Yeah, she did.
Okay.
She does, yeah. She calls out a lot of stuff that's not visible to the eye anymore, underground.
Ooh, so cool.
Yeah, yeah. So Dorothy and her husband Iman fell pregnant and had a baby despite the marriage being rocky already. Wasn't looking good. Dorothy named the baby Sety. What a move. She named the baby after the dude before. Wild, right? I guess Iman didn't care, but Iman's family were not as big a fan of Dorothy and her story as he was. So these are real Egyptian, not saying she wasn't a real Egyptian, but these are current Egyptian people.
And verifiably Egyptian.
Yeah. And they ended up getting divorced just after a few years married, and she changed her name to Omm Sety. Omm Sety, which translates in Egypt to Mother of Sety. Which is kind of ironic, right? Kind of? Well, I mean, maybe the reason she named the baby Sety wasn't necessarily, due to the man, like the pharaoh Sety.
Yeah.
Just the Sety temple in general. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I gotta take that back a little bit. I was kind of harsh on her. She went on to become a very well-respected woman and scholar with amazing knowledge of ancient Egypt. In 1935, she got a job at the Department of Antiquities, and she was the first woman ever to be hired and quickly became an expert in the field, and was really so passionate about her job until a job opened in Abydos in 1952, the town in which she lived. So, of course, she knew she had to go for that position, and she got it. She quickly made a name for herself in the town by spending a lot of time in the temples, praying and even sleeping. She would walk around barefoot all around town and present as extra happy and energetic to all the townspeople. She clearly really felt alive in her hometown, in quotes. Finally, someone wanted to test Omm Sety's claims, and in 1957, a new chief on antiquities knew that he could stump her. He brought her into the Temple of Sety and asked her to bring him into certain rooms 6 different times, each time finding her way with no light and there never being any written documentation of any map for the temple. She appeared to recall every inch of the temple, in fact, and that wasn't all she recalled. She claimed that she could also direct archaeologists to undiscovered gardens below and a secret tunnel on the north side, and both were found with her direction once excavated.
And was this the first time in this life she had entered that temple?
Correct.
Wow.
Yep. Yeah, that's why it was like so compelling, because it's like it's not possible for her to have studied that.
Right.
In it's not possible in books because it was never documented, no map for it at this time. Anyway.
And you said that they did find those gardens and the tunnels?
They did. They found the gardens and a secret tunnel. Yep, on the north side. Did she say anything
about the Sphinx?
Yeah, it's coming.
Okay.
You're doing your little research early over there. I see you.
My gears are turning. My brain's getting so big.
Good. In 1964, she was 60 years old and still a strong worker. And in Egypt, workers retire at 60. Like, that's it.
Yeah.
No matter what. But she was given special permission to continue working since she was seen as such a valuable asset because she was helping with so many different discoveries. Mm-hmm. And in 1972, she directed archaeologists to a library under Sphinx foot. Under a foot of the Sphinx, whether it was left or right, I don't remember by the photos. Mm-hmm. And they did confirm that she was correct once that they excavated it.
Oh, I didn't know that they ever excavated it.
They did.
Because I knew that at one point they confirmed that, like, using sonar or radar or whatever, that there was some sort of chamber, but Egypt didn't want, like, the government did not want anybody excavating it. So I didn't know that actually did happen.
The excavation did happen for sure under the Sphinx's foot. That did happen. And then, so that, like, 100% she nailed that. And then she directed them to the lost tomb of Nefertiti, claiming it was located under the tomb of, this is what you're thinking about with the radar right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
When they excavated, did they find a library or what was in there?
Yes.
Books? Or, like, whatever they used?
I think it was just like the library, like grounds.
Okay.
Like shelves and stuff like for the library. Maybe there was books actually.
Computers and...
Yeah. Computers, yeah.
What is that called? Dewey
Tablets. Imagine that. Oh, shit. That would be wild. Oh, man. She also directed them to the lost tomb of Nefertiti, claiming it was located under the tomb of King Tut, which would have been her stepson.
Oh.
Yeah. Archaeologists thought she was incorrect. I mean, her stepson, had she married.
Right.
I don't know why.
So the son of
Sety. I don't know why she's assumed, like, calling him that, but archaeologists thought that she was incorrect since the tomb of King Tut was found in 1922 and had been studied for over 50 years without any hidden tomb discovered. They didn't have the technology they needed then, and she never knew it, but many years later, in 2015, radar imaging proved that she was totally correct with her prediction, and the lost tomb of Nefertiti was found thanks to Omm Sety. Wow. They didn't know. That one they did not excavate. Famous Egyptologists cannot explain the unknown knowledge that Dorothy possessed, and she gained the title as the patron saint of Egyptology.
Wow.
This amazing woman lived until her death in Egypt in 1981, just walking distance from the temple that she called her real home. And I feel like that's just a totally, like, fulfilling life.
Yeah.
She lived her life as Dorothy, and it's almost like she got to finish her life as Benny.
Yeah.
So, theories. This obviously could be a true reincarnation, right? But we do remember that she did have that head injury when she was small, which there is a such thing as foreign accent syndrome. And I didn't look it up, but I'm pretty sure it's pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah.
It's probably that you're just talking in an accent that you never had before after some kind of brain damage. And maybe it's not even just from brain damage. It could, maybe there's other ways, but that's a theory that she had foreign accent syndrome. Also that she developed OCD after the brain injury, and her passion was...
She fixated.
Egypt, and she became super fixated. That still, to me, doesn't explain some things.
Right.
You know? But really, you know, it could be some people think this is just like a mental health thing, you know? And yeah, but we do know that she discovered so much undocumented stuff.
Right.
So it's like, how can we say that it's not?
And you know what's crazy is, like, she said that tomb was located there, and they couldn't prove her right until years after she died. And it just goes to show that, like, it's not always what you think it is. And we get discoveries years and years later. So many people are arguing with me on the Facebook reels about dumb stuff. And it's like, of course, everything's belief driven, and you can choose to believe something or not. Even if there's evidence, people still deny it. Yep. And that's fine. But it's just incredible that people have been right so many times throughout history, and it just doesn't come out until when it comes out.
Yeah, and they're already deceased half the time.
Right.
So they don't even have that victory, you know?
Right.
Yeah, she clearly, I mean, she was elderly, and she kept this story till the very end, and it was like part of her being, you know, it was who she was.
Yeah.
And she just, from all the pictures of her, she was so cute and just so happy there. Like, she really, really felt happy there. And imagine if she legitimately did die, and the soul of that's when the fix happened. I mean, that's obviously the theory, because none of this stuff was before, but I'm saying, like, imagine if that was really the case. Like, it's just wild to think.
Yeah. So I have a lot of questions, and obviously, like, my brain goes super deep into this stuff, but in my studies and, like, in the stuff that I believe in, the more that I learn, the more that I realize the truth and the fact that there is no such thing as time and space. It's just human perception. And that book that I've been reading, Synchronicity Key, has a whole big section on reincarnation and what happens. And again, it's just somebody's beliefs.
Yeah. And
they're evidenced, because I don't necessarily believe one way or another, beside the fact that I believe that there is no time and space. So my question about that is like, so if Benny died way back in ancient Egypt times, and there is no such thing as time, then that means that if this little girl actually, if her soul actually left her body and Benny came in, it could be instant and there's no time in between. Kind of, I guess. But
even though it's like a 3,000 year gap.
Because there is no time in the like astral plane. So time is a human construct that we use to measure. But it doesn't make it, I mean, obviously in our human experience to say there's no such thing as time, obviously we use clocks, we go to work, we're on schedules and things like that. Right. But I'm just saying, like, a lot of people believe that there is no such thing on the astral plane. So I wonder if it was like instantaneous. So then that leads me to like my other question is, did Dorothy I know she was only 3 and that's kind of around the time you start making memories. So did she have any memories of being Dorothy, or did she, I wonder if it was that quick. And I think part of the like reincarnation, the theory is that you're not supposed to remember for a reason. So I wonder, like, when she came into the body of Dorothy, did the body have memories of Dorothy, or was she 100% this other personality? Like,
yeah, because it makes you wonder, because we know for a fact that even human organs hold like memories and shit, which
DNA
is
holds
so
memories.
Insane. I would love to do something on that, like transplants and how people, that's wicked wild.
It's DNA.
Yeah. And so it makes you wonder, because she still possessed the same brain organ, you know, as Dorothy. If a soul entered her body,
right,
she probably still would have had memories of Dorothy, I would say.
And the way it sounds like is like she only talked in an accent sometimes.
Yeah, it would come in and out.
Yeah. And that kind of reminds me of like reincarnation, because when children are born and they eventually start talking about a past life, it's not like they're not themselves. Yeah. They just remember previous lives. So maybe it's that. Like little but your soul stays the same regardless, right? If that thought process is accurate, if that belief is true, your soul is always your soul, and you never lose that. When you die, you don't die. Yeah. So, I mean, I guess it is more than possible.
I really think that there's something to like, what's the other like wicked famous the Dalai Lama one. That reincarnation story is wild, because it seems like it's a generational thing. And I really believe that there's a good possibility that like we always do that. Like, I feel sometimes I was named after a grandmother that I never met. But I've been told I have some characteristics of her and shit. And sometimes I'm like, I mean, I was named Caitlin and she was like Katerina or something, right? Yeah. But sometimes I wonder, I'm like, am I you?
Well, did you know your maternal grandmother carried you?
Yeah.
That's wild too.
Yeah, it is so wild too. That's like
unbelievable.
It is so amazing.
It makes me sad that I don't have a daughter, because it's like, it just kind of stops. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But
it stops.
Yeah.
It stops in utero, in yours.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, like you said, the other part, maybe it's like a combination of both. Maybe it is because your DNA, I don't know, don't quote me on this, but I've heard things that like DNA holds the most data. So when I made that Facebook reel about the last reincarnation story we did, a lot of people were commenting that it's DNA remembering, because it's storage. That's what it is, which is weird, because if you think about what Bob Lazar said that the aliens said about us, they called us containers. Wow. So it's like, maybe the human body is just a container of data, which is maybe split between your soul and the DNA as storage and memories and things like that. Yeah. I have never really been into past lives or like believed in that stuff, but there's certain things that I see or dream about and I'm like, I know that place. Yeah. Like, and it's like recurring. And it's like,
it could have been from something else that you don't remember right now.
Like Greece. I'm not Greek, but every time I see a picture of Greece, I dream about it. I dream about like the big white buildings along the water and like the turquoise sea, and like looking out over it and
very
like,
interesting.
Yeah. I used to, not as much anymore, but I used to, and like sidewalk cafes that I've never been to.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And feeling like I've been there. I know this place.
Yeah.
But other than that, I've never really had strong feelings.
Yeah. Yourself, like, you know. But that's pretty incredible that you have such vivid, reoccurring dreams of Greece and never being there and not even being Greece.
I mean, it's not like the dream tells me it's Greece, but when I see pictures of Greece, I'm like,
reminds
oh,
you
that's
of
from
Greece.
my dream.
Yeah, it totally
it's so
could
weird.
be somewhere close and similar. But, you know, there's the story, too, of Ryan Hammonds, and he's the boy with the flight, with the pilot in the Air Force that dies. And that story is just absolutely incredible. He's like 3, and he's naming off people's names that... And like,
I want to cover that.
Oh my gosh, such a good one. Like, there's just so much evidence. I mean, only 30% of Americans believe in reincarnation, actually.
Yeah.
But there's so many children that claim to remember past lives. And I mean, we've got so much documented, but we also have parents that don't report it, right? So, like, some parents probably don't even catch on to things that their kids are saying, or maybe kids aren't articulate enough to...
Or it's all like,
you know,
belief systems and what your brain is primed to look for. If you believe in reincarnation and your kid says something like that, your ears are going to perk up. Otherwise, you're just going to think it's the kid just being a kid.
Yeah.
If you don't believe in that, why would you?
That's true.
You
That's
know?
what we talked about with the Pollock sisters, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because a lot of people thought that was...
Because the mother didn't believe, but the father did.
Right.
Yeah, so that's kind of a cool little... test there, you know, like variable, like one believes and one doesn't, you know?
Yeah, right.
But I mean, I just love this case, and I honestly wrote this one recently because Shane brought it up recently.
Yeah.
But I think he doesn't really pay attention to much, so of the stories I tell him, but this one stuck, so I was like, oh, maybe that's a good sign that it's a good one.
My friend Marissa, you'd like her, but she lives in Florida now. She brought this up to me because she went to Egypt recently, and she got to like tour pyramids that other people aren't allowed to because the person she went with knew somebody. Wow. So she got to like touch them, and she was saying that the energy there is like,
I bet it's incredible, like indescribable.
If it was a ley line, what we talked about, she really felt like energy there.
Wow. I bet people like get healed
probably
before they come home.
Yeah.
And then they come back to this.
I would love to go there, but I don't think it's what you'd imagine it being. Like, we're not going to be Indiana Jonesing in there, you know? It's all roped off, and
Speak
you can
for
only...
yourself.
They don't allow it.
But... Yeah. I know.
Yeah. For sure even on my bucket list.
Even just seeing any pyramid inside would be incredible.
You know what's interesting that I keep thinking about? Do you think people like us are obsessed with Egyptology because we all came from like a certain, maybe we are all reincarnated and we're so drawn to that? Or maybe it's like the secrets of the universe type thing that we're drawn to because we don't know, or they haven't told us how the pyramids were built and why and by who.
That's probably a big part of it. Yeah. Just the whole mystery of it all. Yeah.
That's probably what it is.
It is. Because, I mean, there's nothing else really appealing except the pyramids.
Yeah, that's true. The whole culture.
Yeah, the whole culture. But
pyramids aren't necessarily Egyptian.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. They're everywhere. But just in Egypt, like, what am I going to want to see in Egypt? Pyramids.
Well, what I mean is... The pyramids were probably built by somebody else that was not Egyptian. Like the Egyptian pyramids, I mean. Like the pyramids of Giza, I think, were not built by the Egyptians anyway.
I don't think so either. Yeah. We've talked about this already on an episode, right?
I think so because we talked about a couple other... We talked about the Grand Canyon one.
Oh,
and we talked
it was
about
the guy that built the... Never mind.
Yeah,
I have a very...
Van Tassel.
Yes. I have a very hard time with remembering if we did something or not already. So that's not good.
In an episode that we covered previously, we talked about the theory that the pyramids were used for rejuvenation of the human body, and that civilizations for centuries after knew that, but didn't know how to use them properly because they didn't understand energy and how it works. Like, we still don't, or at least they tell us we don't.
Right.
So I always wondered, once I learned that, I was like, well, is that why Egyptians put their pharaohs in there? Because they really truly believed that they could rejuvenate the body in some way? Or that, because they did say that they put them in there for
the afterlife.
For the afterlife. Yeah. So.
Yeah, maybe.
I don't know.
Yeah, I know. It's weird. I mean, imagine, like you were saying, though, like, imagine if that dude that she married was like the pharaoh in the past life. Yeah. And they found each other again, but he didn't remember his past life. So it was just like, imagine that. That's
that
wild.
book I'm reading, when he talks about reincarnation, they do talk about your soul family and that you always reincarnate with the same people over and over.
That's the
like
feeling I have about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I just don't know why. I just feel like it really does.
Oh yeah. I feel like that too. Like, I 100% believe in like twin flames. I know it's like a super stupid buzzword right now, and there's things about it that people don't believe in, whatever, but I really do believe in like karmic type relationships and soul families, and you're here to learn. Earth is a school, and you're gonna come back if you can't. Hopefully this is the last time.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if I'd want to live again. Yeah, I don't know.
The more I learn, the more I'm like, hell yeah, I'd come back in a second. But then it's like, well, you're not gonna remember, so it's not like you're gonna remember what you learned, but maybe you would.
You
might, I don't know.
You might remember.
There's old souls. They call them that for a reason. So
yep. So yeah, I mean, obviously before like closing this episode, I should say, like, you know, we're not saying this happened for sure. We're saying this is the story, and it's a very big story. So it's got a lot of, you know, there's when you have Egyptologists saying like, wow, this is super unexplainable. Right. And her experience and knowledge is so uncanny.
And it's like, there's evidence, like pretty solid evidence, as solid as you can get, that she did know these things. Right. And how else would you know that? And that's similar to the Ingo Swann thing, because people are like, there's no such thing as a verified psychic. It's like, how much more verified can you get?
Yeah. It's, you know, truth being told, like the beginning part of her life, that is all coming from her. So that is all word of mouth. We just have to take her word for that. There is no evidence about that. I could not find anything from back then about anything about her fall or anything. So this is just her story that she stuck to her whole life. But, you know, once she got older and she actually made the move to Egypt, then that's a different story.
And I'm sure her parents supported this while they were alive and stuff. I'm sure, like, they were interviewed at some point.
I'm sure. But I couldn't find anything on it. So,
but who knows?
This is the story. So,
just cool to think about.
It is.
Imagine if.
That's the thing, is like, I have a hard time sometimes selecting stories, because I'm like, but that's not mysterious enough. But I have to like tell myself, it doesn't have to be like that. It needs to be just enough to open your mind. Yeah, there's some stuff that I can't remember now what it was, but I saw something. I was like, oh, I wish I could do an episode on that, but it's not a mystery. But then again, we did the Golden Record, and that wasn't a mystery. It's just cool. Just something cool that some people might not know. Right. You know? Yeah. That's what's cool about it. So hopefully you didn't know the story and you enjoyed it. Yeah. Thank you for listening. Nice, strong comeback after our break. Yes, that's what I wanted. And I'm ready. All right. All right. Well, thank you for that. I really enjoyed it. You're welcome. You're most welcome. And we will see you next week. Stay mysterious.